I'm your host, Joel Perez, and you're watching Wrestling with Politics. And today we're going to be talking about the return of former Vice President Kamala Harris to the political scene. We haven't seen Kamala Harris in quite a couple months, and she just did her first major interview on MSNBC with the leading host on MSNBC, Rachel Maddow. And Kamala Harris, she didn't come back here to run for some type of office. She claims in this interview multiple times that Donald Trump, the man who beat her in the 2024 election, she claims that he's a tyrant, he's a Nazi, and he's all sorts of things. She even calls him a communist at one point in this interview, a communist dictator. But she claims that he's all of these things, and yet somehow she wasn't able to beat him. Somehow people decided to choose him over her, but also she didn't come back to run against Donald Trump or to do anything that would actually put her in a position to fight back against Donald Trump. She's back to sell her new book. She's back to scam her supporters and to make as much money as humanly possible, because at the end of the day, as much as she might claim that she hates Donald Trump and that he's the largest threat to America, she's not willing to do anything to actually stand up to the man who she calls Hitler. And she's only gonna come back, and she's only gonna come back into the limelight when it's time to sell a book and to extort you for as much money as humanly possible. It doesn't get any more pathetic than this. And it actually does get more pathetic than this, because if you watch this interview between Rachel Maddow and Kamala Harris, oh my goodness, you're in for a trip, because Kamala Harris, she comes back to prove that she's horrible at this. She reminds everybody in this interview exactly how bad she is at this and why she lost to Donald Trump, why she couldn't beat Donald Trump, and why people ultimately chose Donald Trump over her. Because from the very first clip in this interview, Kamala Harris, she goes straight into the usual bullcrap and immediately reminds us why we hated her so much, why we were in such disgust with not just her, but with the entire Democratic Party. And she immediately goes into a word salad from the very first answer in this interview. Let's watch this back and let's roll this first clip.
All of that, I warned of it. What I didn't predict was the capitulation. The billionaires lining up to grovel, the big media companies, universities, so many major law firms, I will note, including your husband's.
Yeah, and he spoke out about it.
He's been very vocal in criticizing it. He said they've all been bending to blackmail and outrageous demands.
Yeah.
Why did you not predict the capitulation? And what do you make of the effort to try to put some steel in the spine of those institutions?
So, as you know, I am a lifelong public servant, and but I've worked closely with the private sector over many years, and I always believed that if push came to shove, those titans of industry would be guardrails for our democracy, for the importance of sustaining democratic institutions. And one by one, they have been silent. They have been, yes, I use the word feckless. It's not like they're going to lose their yacht or their house in the Hamptons. And here's the thing. Democracy sustains capitalism. Capitalism thrives in a democracy. And right now we are dealing with, as I called him at my speech on the Ellipse, a tyrant. We used to compare the strength of our democracy to communist dictators. That's what we're dealing with right now in Donald Trump. And these titans of industry are not speaking up.
And right from the beginning of the interview there, Kamala Harris, she comes out guns blazing because I didn't even realize it when I first saw it. But in the very first 5 minutes of the interview, Kamala Harris, she comes out and calls Donald Trump a communist dictator. And so this is just absolutely preposterous, because if Donald Trump is a tyrant, if Donald Trump is a dictator, if Donald Trump is a communist, if he's all of these horrible things, then what does that say about you, Kamala? Because at the end of the day, people chose Donald Trump over you. They said, he might be a dictator, he might be a communist, he might be all of these horrible things, but we prefer that over you. So how the hell could you come out here and say all of these horrible things about Donald Trump, not realizing that the American people decided to choose Donald Trump over you? You were worse than Donald Trump. That's how bad you were. So it's absolutely ridiculous, and it doesn't stop there, because Kamala Harris, she then also says, why is nobody standing up to Donald Trump? Why is she's expecting all the billionaires and all these corporations to stand up to Donald Trump? That's not what these people are going to do. Do you know what kind of system we're in? Those people are going to try to buy Donald Trump. Those people are going to try to get in the ear of Donald Trump. Those people are going to try to carry influence with Donald Trump. That's their job now. Now that Donald Trump is in the position of power, they're going to extract and leverage that power that Donald Trump has, and they're going to use their money to try to get in Donald Trump's ear. Why would Kamala Harris expect any different? And beyond that, she's expecting somebody to stand up to Donald Trump. She wants some guardrails put up against Donald Trump. That's what you were supposed to be, Kamala Harris. You were supposed to be the one who stood up to Donald Trump. You were supposed to be the one who was supposed to be the opposition, but instead you chose to be just like Donald Trump. In this interview, she comes and says that Donald Trump failed to raise prices. The prices started going up when you were in office. That was a problem that was going on when you were in power, Kamala Harris. And the very reasons that Donald Trump got elected is because of how much of a failure Kamala Harris was. So for her to come out in this interview and start complaining and saying the very first quote in the book that Rachel Maddow played was Kamala Harris saying that she was right about everything. No, you were wrong about everything. That's why you lost, and that's why you failed to be the opposition against Donald Trump, and why people chose Trump over you. So absolutely preposterous from the very beginning of this interview, and it only gets worse here.
You say in the book really bluntly that your personal first choice for your running mate would have been Pete Buttigieg, and you praise him effusively. You say he would have been an ideal partner if I were a straight man. And you say effectively that demographically it was too much to ask of the American people, to ask them to elect you with him as your running mate. I wonder if his reaction to that, since this part of the book has come out, if you've had any reflection on that, or I guess I'd ask you to just elaborate on that a little bit. It's hard to hear.
Yeah.
With you running as, you're the first woman elected vice president. You're a black woman and a South Asian woman elected to that high office, very nearly elected president. To say that he couldn't be on the ticket effectively because he was gay is hard to hear.
No. That's not what I said. That he couldn't be on the ticket because he is gay. My point, as I write in the book, is that I was clear that in 107 days, in one of the most hotly contested elections for president of the United States, against someone like Donald Trump, who knows no floor, to be a black woman running for president of the United States, and as a vice presidential running mate, a gay man, with the stakes being so high, it made me very sad, but I also realized it would be a real risk. No matter how, I've been an advocate and an ally of the LGBT community my entire life. So it wasn't about any prejudice on my part, but
that
we had such a short period of time, and the stakes were so high. I think Pete is a phenomenal public servant. And I think America is and would be ready for that But when I had to make that decision with 2 weeks to go, you know, and maybe I was being too cautious. You know, I'll let our friends, we should all talk about that. Maybe I was. But that's the decision I made. And I, as with everything else in the book, I'm being very candid about that.
Yeah.
With a great deal of sadness about also the fact that it might have been a risk.
And in that clip, you see Kamala Harris prove exactly how horrible she is at politics, why she's not the president today. She proves why Donald Trump is the president today, because right there you see Rachel Maddow ask her, and this is the clip that's going viral online. Rachel Maddow asked Kamala Harris why she didn't choose Pete Buttigieg as her vice president. She asked her straight up, was it because he was gay? And Kamala Harris says, no, it's not because of that. And then she goes along and says it basically is because he was gay. And because she didn't have enough time, and the American people, they weren't going to get around that, and that she's ashamed and perhaps disappointed over the fact that people would have a problem with the fact that he was gay. So she goes ahead and denies it, and then straight after goes ahead and says, yeah, it's basically because he was gay. And what it says in her book is that, yeah, she didn't choose him for vice president because he was gay. And the American people, they weren't going to buy that, and that was going to lose her support. So why can't you just come out straight up and say that if that's what's actually going on? Instead, she denies it and then goes ahead and says it anyways and comes up with the most lazy excuse for why she couldn't do it. She's just absolutely horrible at this. And then beyond that, it's like I said, why isn't she running for governor? Why isn't she running for some other type of political office? She's not in it for that. She's in it for her own personal gain, for her own career advancements. And right now, what will benefit Kamala Harris the most is not running for office, because she wouldn't even win in her home state of California, and she denied running in California, probably for that very reason. They probably saw the polling and they saw that it wasn't even looking good for Kamala in her home state. And so that's why she's not running for office. Instead, she's selling you. She's here to sell you a book. And she can't even do that right. She can't even look good in this interview when she's talking to Rachel Maddow, who didn't ask her a single tough question. This is supposed to be the fluffy, cozy interview. And she can't even deliver when it comes to that. She still fumbled, and there's still an online clip going around showing this absolute embarrassment of an answer. Dozens of clips going around of a bunch of word salads, the same crap that we saw that during the election. It only took 107 days for the entire country to decide, hell no, we don't want this. And Kamala Harris, please stay away. And the last little piece of propaganda that I want to dispel in this interview is the excuse that was trying to be peddled by both Rachel Maddow and Kamala Harris in several points of this interview, that Kamala Harris, she lost because this was the shortest presidential campaign in history. Kamala, you only had 107 days to run, and you got short-sighted by Joe Biden, who decided to drop out at the last minute. And Kamala, you didn't have a fair shot at this. You needed more time. You should have had longer, and that's why you lost to Donald Trump. The people, they just didn't have enough time to realize that, Kamala, you were the right one. That's complete bullcrap. And that line of argument right there, if there's anybody who actually believes that, well, you shouldn't be watching this video, that's for sure, because that's going to get shot down at 100 miles per hour, because it's complete bullcrap. The reason that Kamala Harris lost to Donald Trump is because she decided to be just like Joe Biden. She decided to go on The View and say that there would be no fundamental difference between her and Joe Biden. And what we saw for 4 years under the Joe Biden administration is a presidency where the deep state and corporations had full control, where prices went up at no stop, no control. And Kamala Harris, she was there the entire time peddling the lies at the highest order every single step of the way, telling us that Joe Biden is not demented. Still to this day, she's peddling that same lie that Joe Biden is not demented. I don't know if she said it in this interview, but I believe she said it on the Joy Reid show. And if she's still saying that, it proves that she's an absolute horrible, one of the worst liars that we've ever seen in our lifetime. Because if she still has the balls to say that Joe Biden was not demented, that he was actually competent, that he was actually able to run the country, well, then you know how far and how deep the lie goes, because we know that Joe Biden, he wasn't the one running the country. Otto Penn was running the country according to Donald Trump. And if you ask me, the deep state was the ones running the country. And Kamala Harris, she was lying to you about it, and still to this point is lying to you about it at the top of her lungs. And that's why she lost, because people were tired of being lied to. People were tired of being told to ignore the evidence of their own eyes and ears. And that's exactly what Kamala Harris would do. And the people were so tired of it. People were tired of seeing the Gaza genocide continue. Let's also mention that they were willing to stomach voting for Donald Trump. Even though Donald Trump, we know he's not the best alternative, he was looking like a rose golden apple compared to Kamala Harris. And so that's why Kamala Harris lost. It's not because she only had 107 days. It's because she was one of the worst presidential candidates in history. That's why she lost. So let's just set the record straight there. And for now, that's all I've got to say. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And make sure to like, make sure to comment, make sure to subscribe. There's going to be a lot more content coming your way. Thank you so much for watching this video.